This is the Rookie Renovators class on plumbing, and my name is Steve. I'll be your instructor today. And basically what we're going to try to do is give you a basic understanding of plumbing, how the systems work, and we'll talk about maybe some repairs that you need to do. So first of all, if we want to look at the way a plumbing system works, there's two parts of the system. One is the drain and waste, and one is the water supply. So if we talk about the drain and waste, basically, if you think of all we had to do was just take pipes and bring them to a certain drain and that was it, it would be very easy to do. But there's an issue we have with methane gas. That's the gas that's produced by the waste products. That's in the sewer system, and we try, although we want to be able to use the drain system, we have to protect ourselves from the backflow of the methane gas. How we do that is we do that through a trap. So if you look at this system, you'll notice that there's traps on all the appliances. The toilet has a trap built right into it. Shower trap, floor drain trap. What that does is this lower part of this trap, when you use it with water, it fills with water, and the water stays in this part, therefore not allowing the gas to go back through the water to come back in. So that's how you protect it. So those of you that have disconnected a sink or disconnected, see the sink, the trap is outside the wall. It's in the, you know, the little trap that's right out the sink. So what happens is if you disconnect the sink, you will have methane gas come out that pipe. So you need to plug it with a rag or something. Or you pull a toilet. That hole, you need to put something in it. Okay? The other issue we have is, and this is pretty common, it's a floor drain in the basement. Okay, there's two kinds. There's the one that goes to a sump pump. So if you have a sump pump in the floor, that means all the water that drains from the basement go into a tank. There's a little pump that pumps that water out, okay? The other system is, and probably what most of you have, is a regular floor drain that has a trap in it. But we never use the floor drain, so therefore it dries out, water evaporates. So you might be having, when you go down in the basement, you get this stinky smell, kind of like rotten eggs or methane. That's what that's from. So all you have to do to fix it, take a glass of water every couple months, dump it in the floor drain. That'll put the water back in there, stop the methane gas from coming back, okay? So the other thing that we need to know is that if you notice that there is a venting system, okay? How that system works is there has to be air behind water for the water to flow correctly and smoothly. Otherwise, I tell you what it's like. It's like a milk jug. You fill it with water or with whatever, and as you dump it out, you notice that it chugs, it blow as it drains. But if you punch the hole into it, it goes fast and smooth. Okay? That's the vent. That's the air behind the water. That's why all your systems are set up so that they vent. So if you don't have a vent, you might have someone remodeled, put in a sink or a vanity or a toilet or whatever and didn't fit it, you have drain problems. You have slow drain. You notice that the water doesn't go down very fast. It's slow draining. It could be simply that a bad drain. It could be a bird's nest in the vent as it comes out through the roof. So vents are important. A lot of times you can tell if your vents are good. On a really windy day, you might see your toilet water moving. The air will blow back in and it'll cause your water to raise up and lower a little bit. And probably no one ever noticed it, but on a really windy day, check that. And you'll see that that actually is fact. That means you have good vents. Okay? So that basically is your venting systems and how it works. Again, methane gas is the danger we have to watch out for. So when you disconnect something, make sure that it either has a trap, showers, tubs, floor drains, toilets, not toilets. Everything else has a trap external. the toilet, if you look at the side of a toilet, you'll see that right built into the toilet, you'll see that it has the trap built into it. So that drain underneath it has no trap. So if you pull the toilet, there's methane gas going to come out of there. Methane gas is highly explosive. So we move over to the water systems, and that's the fresh water supply of the house. And basically, it's pretty straightforward. The water comes into the house. If you have a well that goes through a pump system, goes through a holding tank to build pressure up. But most of us have a system that's like this, right here, with the meter, where it comes out of the floor, have a shut off, there's the meter, and then it services the house. So, and of course this is where you would always go to shut off the water to the main house immediately. Is you can always take this water meter. See, this is the way it would come into the house, something like this. Okay, it comes out of the floor. And this first valve is what you shut off. And that shuts off the water. This one here shuts the water off the house too. So either one. Sometimes you only have one. The reason they have two is so that they can replace the meter if they have to, without having to shut the water off of the street. So this is where you will go if you have a problem and you can't shut the water off. You can run down to your basement, find out where your meter is, and then shut that valve. That'll shut off the water of the house. Okay, so after we get water into the house, it's distributed. Of course, the cold water immediately feeds the hot water heater, and then from there, it basically distributes hot and cold water throughout the house. Now, as pipes go, you need to start off with a larger pipe, and then as you reduce the pipe, you increase the pressure. So you might start off with the large pipe like this 3/4, but by the time it's at your fixture, it's 1/2 inch. Okay, so if you have an upstairs, you might feed this. All this main run here is 3/4. But then these little taps can be 1/2 inch. That increases the pressure, okay? The other thing is, you'll notice that on these, they have this little piece of stub sticking up, okay? That's a vacuum breaker. A lot of houses don't have that. What that does is, as the water is in the system, you develop air bubbles in it. So what happens is that chamber grabs the air and keeps your pipes from, when you turn on a valve, it goes bam, bam, bam. That stops that, okay? So basically, that's how the water system works. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Just run hot and cold at each fixture you need them. And so now what we'll talk about is the type of water lines. We could talk about drains, but in most cases, unless you're doing a major remodel, you won't need to really deal with drains. The drains that we have today in most houses is cast iron. I think it was in like the 50s or 60s, they started using PVC, and that's really come a long way. So they actually have, and you've all seen the PVC, the white pipe they use for drains. So if we take those PVC drains, the basic understanding is that using the right fittings for the right application, some fittings you can't put in other applications. So you kind of have to have a basic of how that works. And attaching the pipes, what we do is we use a primer and a glue. There's different glues. There's different glues and primers for different types of fittings. So, for example, if we use this is regular PVC here. So this would be a 90. This is straight pipe, and this is a coupling. So you notice that all the purple, that's the primer. What that does is that cleans any imperfections in the pipe. That allows the glue to stick. If you don't prime it first, you could not have a good seal. Okay? If you had some trash, the glue won't stick to it and you get a little bit of a leak. Once you glue this, you won't be able to get it apart to fix it. So it's important you do it right the first time. The primer is messy, but it's the purple stuff, and then the glue is basically this type of glue is clear, but there are different glues and different primers for different kinds of PVC. There is, for example, this is CPVC. It's kind of a beigey piece. Probably a lot of you have had repairs in your house, if your house is a little bit older, and they've done it with this, okay? The glue they use for this is different than the glue used for this. So you have to use the right glue for the type of pipe you're using. The reason that they use the CPVC is because the regular PVC is not rated for the hot water. This is, okay? So, but this is not, now the technology is such that this is kind of getting outdated. And what we're going to is this PEX. This is the way to go.
It's called what?
PEX, P-E-X.
Is that more expensive?
No, it's probably less expensive. And if you discount the money you're not going to have to spend with fittings. See, if I'm going down the wall and I need to turn up, I got to put a fitting. So it means I got to glue it, clean it, cut it. With this stuff, you just go up. That's the key. So you don't have joints. So you can kind of fish it through where you need to without any problems. Okay?
You need no joints with the PEX.
Well, the PEX joints, well, you will need some in some certain situations when you come to the end and so forth. But there are certain fittings, and we'll talk about those. We'll actually do a couple so we can see what that's about. Most of you have galvanized, okay? The galvanized is the most houses in the before 50s was used with galvanized, and still a lot of commercial buildings still use this today because of the fire rating. If this gets in a fire, it still works. If you get copper in a fire, it unsolders. So in commercial, they still use a lot of the galvanized. It does have a life though. It has a life of maybe 30, 40 years. So a lot of your houses are reaching that life. And what happens is they clog up. So this is probably what the inside, if you have galvanized pipe that are over 30 years old, want to pass that around, that's what the insides look like. The other thing we want to talk about in this water system is the valves. So as you're going through and you're trying to replace valves, there's two kinds of valves. There's a ball valve, which is new technology, and the only way you should go. Basically, it's what you also call a quarter turn valve. In one quarter turn, it's open or shut, instead of 75 turns, and then it's dripping the whole time. So what I've done is I have two valves that are cut away. This is the standard valve. You see how it works. So go ahead and open it up and shut it so you can see how it works. And open and shut this, and then you'll see the difference between the two valves. This is probably exactly what we're talking about, what you have. So what there is there's the handle, there's the stem, there's a nut that holds the stem in place, and then when you get down the side, on the end of the stem, you'll see that there's a rubber washer. I'll pass this around so everyone can see it. On the end of it is a rubber washer, okay? In most cases, all you need to do is take off this nut. You'll see if you take your handle off, even on your regular valve, you take the handle off, you'll see that there's a nut. Of course, you're going to shut the water off first. You take off the nut, and as you take off the nut, and you should be, yeah, I mean, I've done it, you know, so you take off the nut, and as you pull the nut out, you should be able to unscrew this, and it'll come right out, okay? And on the end of it, you'll see there's a rubber washer. That's where your leak is. That rubber washer is worn down. Okay, so you can buy this washer. You can buy a pack of washers for $1. You can just take this apart, replace this washer, push it back together. This is a 10-minute repair. You put it back in, you tighten it down. You don't crank it all the way down because you want to have this nut, a little room for the nut. You tighten this nut down, okay, and then you shut your valve and you're good to go. Now, if it still leaks, which it could, there's a thing in here called a seat, okay? It's a little more involved, but it's not that big of a deal. So what you do is you'll take the nut off, and you can go down to your hardware store with the seat, with your valve stem, and they'll find one an exact replacement right off the shelf. Okay? Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's, they all have them. So you'll go down, this is the stem. This stem, you can go get a replacement stem, okay? You can get a replacement handle. Okay, now, once you have this out, you'll look down in here, and when I pass this around, you'll see it. There's a seat. What this seat is, it receives this rubber. But when the rubber wears out, sometimes you keep cranking it more to try and get it to stop leaking. What you do is you actually run the brass into the seat and wear the seat out. Once you wear the seat out, you won't, no matter what you do, you won't be able to get a good seal. So what we do is we replace the seat. These are on stock, right on the shelf. All you have to do is get a seat tool. Now there's different kinds of seat tools. Each of these seats, sometimes they're square, sometimes they're octagon. All you do is after you get it out, you take the seat tool, once you've determined what kind of a seat it is. Now see, that one doesn't fit. You'll feel it immediately when you put it in if it's the right one. Okay, I felt that lock in there. Now what you do is, these are, and here's the kicker, they're not regular threads, they're left hand. So normally you will go righty tighty, lefty loosey, okay? We're going to go the opposite. We're going to go right, maybe. Here I am, this one is wrong, but this one is left. I've never seen one that way. Usually they're the other way. But
Mobile home one.
yeah, probably. So here's the deal. Normally they're opposite, left hand. But you'll know when you see the threads when you hit it out. So if you really, they're not that hard in there. So when you really crank one way, it doesn't go the other way. But 90% of the time they're left. If you strip, most time when you strip something that you cross thread it or you strip it, time to go down and buy a new one. We can talk about some of the different kinds of pipes. This is copper, this is galvanized, okay? This fitting that we have in between here is what they call a dielectric fitting, okay? Now, most chance you won't have to use this because your pipe will probably rust out before this electrolysis happens. But when you have two different metals that are touching each other, especially when you have water involved, they destroy each other. The metals, they work together and they corrode. So what you do is you get corrosion. Well, pretty much like the corrosion piece that we pass around. So what happens is you can install what they call a dielectric fitting. This fitting is made so that these two pipes don't touch, yet it's waterproof, okay? But they're about 15 or 20 bucks. They're barbed fittings, okay? And so what they do is you simply slide the pipe on, okay, and put on a it looks like a ferrule, but what it is it's basically a clamp, and there's a couple kinds of clamps. There are, okay, what we have is, if you look at this, this is a clamp that has a side. It's like the tool actually clamps on one side and it kind of pulls up the excess off to the side. The other way is this is a copper ring, and it takes a different kind of tool. But the tool with this one is probably a little bit better. However, what it is the tool is 150 bucks to make this clamp. So this one is much less. This is the tool. And basically, you'll see what it does when I'll pass it around so you can see it. Let's say that you're going to replace this kitchen sink, and you're going to replace the valves and faucets and everything because they keep clogging up on you. So what you do is, you go down the basement, follow out where they go back to the nearest joint, okay? You can start there. You don't necessarily have to disassemble the pieces one at a time. If you have a Sawzall, which is the solid reciprocating saw, it'll cut metal. You can cut right through the metal and pull the piece out. Then what you have is you have this little piece sticking out with a cut edge. You take a pipe wrench, take one pipe wrench to hold this fitting, the other one to take the galvanized pipe out. That gives you a clean fitting to start again, okay? You get whatever kind of fitting you need to adapt. Then from there, you just go with pecs, okay? And you can scoot it right on up around where you need to go, up into your vanity, and then put a valve on the end of it. Now the valves, they have a lot of valves that are Pec valves. That actually, the valve itself, shut off, looks like this, would hook right onto the Pecs, okay? It has a fitting like this barb on the bottom. And you would just stick it right into the pipe, okay? That will give you your shutoff. So, connection-wise, if you have copper in your house, there's another way you can do this. If any of you have ever done any copper work in the house, and you try to add in a T or something, what happens is that the house keeps draining. And you get down to the last fitting, and you can't do it. You can't solder it because the drip that comes through cools the solder and you can't get it to solder. So they come up with this ingenious tool or fitting. It's called a shark bite fitting. What it does is it'll attach to anything 1/2 inch. It'll attach to this, it'll attach to this copper, it'll attach to the Pecs. It will not attach to the galvan. But what it does is, let's say you want to put a T in for a new run. You cut your copper, you get the shark bite. All it does is it pushes on. That's it. You're done. You want to put in, that's it. It's done. It's a watertight connection. If you picture this being a T, they have these in a T. So you would cut your existing line, stick this in, stick your new Pecs into the side, and you could create a whole new water line in the house. No problem, very quickly and very easily. There's a chart over there on the wall that talks about the amount of money that you lose by dripping. So if you look at that, it says that one faucet leaking 60 drips per minute. That's 1 a second. Okay? It wastes 7 gallons of water a day. Right? A leaking faucet can waste as much as 20 gallons of water in a month. In a year, it's enough to fill a bathtub 77 times. Okay? So that's what a Drippy faucet that you let go for a year can do. So it's important to fix it because you're paying by the gallon. Typically what you do is you'll have a double bowl sink, okay? So you'll have two sides of the sink, and both will have, maybe one has a disposal, maybe not, but it comes out in the same thing. There's a connect, this one might have a fitting like this that's just a straight 90. Then you come into here, and then this one, of course, would have a T. Okay, and then you go into your trap. So what happens is this pipe here, the angle of this pipe, again, 1/4 inch per foot. If it's leaning back, then stuff can build up because it can't get out. So you kind of inspect it to see that everything is falling 1/4 inch per foot, all heading toward the drain. Okay. Now, typically on this kind of a situation, if you need to snake this, you're better off to, where this goes into the wall, you're going to have a fitting here, probably maybe a vent too, but this will stick out, and this is where you have a nut on it, where it goes into the wall. Am I blocking a bunch of you? So what happens is, what you'll do is, if this kitchen sink is slow drain, you obviously check these fittings, but what you can do is, it's real easy to take off the trap. Okay, you take off a nut here, you take off the nut here, take off the nut here, and it all comes apart. You just take it out. You can inspect it for clean. If this is all clear, you can run a little coat hanger or something down through these to make sure they're clear, because there's no obstruction. Then you have to deal with the drain in the wall. Okay, so that could be what it is. Typically, if it's a drain like this, the first step always to use is a drain cleaner, like a chemical type cleaner, because that's the easiest way. They guarantee 7 minutes or your money back type of things, and they work, you know. So that would be the first step. Then if that doesn't work, then you have to snake it. But basically, it's a matter of taking things apart to inspect them to make sure that you have good flow and no obstructions.